Oh damn, we are live. First time streaming. This says it'll give you a minute before you're live, but here we are. Is that? Are we live? Yes, okay. Wow, it's quite a delay. It's about a 10-second delay. No, it's more, it's like a 20-second delay. Okay, well this works good too. No. Right, let me mute this so that I'm not hearing myself back. Okay, cool. Well, listen, I'm going to start doing some Humane League Fast Action Network actions. I am live for the first time. So please, if you come in the chat, I am here to react to you. And, if you want to see anything in particular, we can look at some debates later. I'm going to have a look at... I have a couple of debates that we might have a look at. But okay, let's... we're just going to do a little bit of this Fast Action Network activism. I invite you guys to join in. This will be quite cool because a lot of this is on social media, so we can get kind of everyone posting in the same places. We can really get a lot of people doing this at the same time. That'll be quite cool. So I'm going to put the link in chat, action.thehumaneleague.org. If you haven't signed up, go and sign up. They make it super easy to do this. And I can just comment that your comment contains language that's been reported in the past. We may have misunderstood you. Right, I copy-pasted this. Let's have a look. You're a disgrace to the hospital. Yeah, I know. I think this is fine to post on a company page. If you're posting this on someone's personal LinkedIn, it's a little forward, but to a company, I think that's all right. You're a disgrace. It tried to moderate it. All right, let's do a few of these. And it links to a video. We should actually have a look at some of the lore behind these because I always just post them and don't really read what they're about, to be honest. But Best Western, they are a common target here, actually. So this is... in fact, most of these are cage-free egg commitment pledges. Companies backing out of them, companies refusing to make them, and so on. So these sort of public pressure campaigns are designed to get them to follow through. So Best Western, big hotel chain. Well, every year they use roughly 90 million eggs, impacting the lives of 319,000 hens. Look at that, they know to the hen, or at least they've expressed it to the hen. Well, nearly all major hotel groups are reporting comprehensive progress. Best Western is reporting progress for only select regions and lacks a clear plan to reach 100% cage-free globally. 2025 deadline fast approaching. Okay, well, I guess that's means the end of 2025. But in any case, we gave them a bit of stick on LinkedIn, so that's good. The call one, I never do the calling ones because they're always US based. Maybe that's a cop out. I probably could call to US somehow. Let's do Facebook post. You don't get any points for the Facebook posts on this, but you know, we should still do them. So what's the target with this one? We've got Riverstone Health. And it's a Best Western thing again. So is this a chain of Riverstone Health, I guess? A chain of Best Western? A brand of Best Western? That hash looks like it maybe is not meant to be there. Is that the correct? Okay, I guess it is correct. All right, so we'll post this a few times. Now again, guys, if people on the live stream join in, we'll flood these posts, which will be good fun. We're trying to pressure, at the moment, Best Western. Oh, nice, look at this. There's a couple of people who have posted on there from yesterday. At the moment, we're trying to get Best Western to follow through on their cage-free policy. So we are spamming this comment on a few of their posts. We're going to do a little bit of this. We might look at some debate content later on. Comment on Pray Tell's Facebook posts. There's another Best Western thing. I guess a lot of these are companies with connections. Okay, yeah, Pray Tell just for working with a client. Yeah. So Best Western are a client of Pray Tell for something. Oh, look at that, UTM source, ChatGPT. Can happen. That can happen. Hey guys, I see a few people watching now. We are posting on social media for a few companies that are connected to failures to follow through on cage-free pledges. This is, it kind of doesn't feel like it because we're just commenting on social media, but this is one of the most high impact to low effort things that we can do to help animals. The reason for that is there's a lot of work that goes in the back end of these campaigns, right? We're not just commenting randomly on social media here. It's all connected to a larger campaign. These particular targets have been selected for the connection to Best Western. It's been done in such a way that they're going to be getting pressure from multiple different stakeholder groups and so on. So it looks like maybe we're done with Best Western for now. We've got Subway. Subway's another one that we've emailed a lot on this platform. I don't know if anyone uses Outlook. This just brings up, I'm not sharing my Outlook, but this just brings up my whole Outlook, and it has the email written, addresses in, ready to send. That's it. That's only got one of these. Okay, it's only to one person. All right, fine. So guys, if you want to join in, we're going to be crossing paths on Facebook posts and so on. It's action.thehumaneleague.org. Let's change the name of the stream as well. Hey, it's a bit generic at the moment. Vegan 2.0 live stream. Nice. All right. So again, I'm not in the calling ones because they're calling to America, which I'm not going to do. Certainly not at the moment. Even though there's 4 points on the Humane League platform, so it's be a good one. BWH Hotels again. So this, okay, so this is Best Western. This is a brand of Best Western. Massive hotel chain. 300,000 hens in cages for this company. They've said they're going to go cage free and they haven't followed through. Look, there's a bunch of people doing this campaign and commenting on there. That's awesome. Essentially all the comments are about this. Companies do respond to this stuff, guys. I mean, if there's a bunch of people coming onto your social media posts talking about the same issue, they're going to notice that, they're going to respond. There's going to be pressure on them to do that, especially if they're also getting emails about the same issue and they're getting suppliers and clients about the same issue saying that they can't work with them anymore. Right, at some point, it's just, the company's just going to say it's in our own interest to, right, to follow through and to do the pledge. Sorry, my dog's barking downstairs. I'm going to have to check him out in a minute. Green Key Global. So this is another... Green Key Global is affiliated with Best Western through a collaboration to incorporate Green Key sustainability certification and program across Best Western hotels in the US and Canada. Okay, so there's some sort of sustainability certifier. And they're going to be working with Best Western, even though Best Western have not been following through on their pledges. So let's give them a hard time. Yeah, again, this is a really... I mean, it feels like really low effort to do, and it really is low effort to do. But this can help a lot of animals because we are doing this in a coordinated way where the particular targets have been picked out, they've been researched and their connection to a particular company, and they even make these websites that are aimed at particular executives, which I quite like that as a strategy, right? Very direct, very difficult to ignore. They have websites literally in personal names that will be, you know, whatever the name.com for like the Subway CEO. And they're going after them and they're publishing, you know, they've got photos of them up there and everything. It's pretty, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, again, these are powerful people with a lot of responsibility to make decisions, and this sort of thing is, I mean, it really shouldn't be, but this sort of thing is like one of the only ways we have to really hold them to account. Because we're asking them to do changes which are above, you know, the legal minimum standards, they're not obliged to do them. They will only do them really if they think it's in the company's interest ultimately. And it will be in the company's interest if lots of people actually care about it. And it won't be if they don't, right? It's as simple as that. So this is the mechanism for showing these companies lots of people care about this. So this was an email, we just sent an email to, I wasn't even paying attention to who that was, but it was either Best Western or Subway, right? These are the main targets at the moment. And again, they will have been picked because they are using large amounts of eggs. And so therefore having a cage-free pledge at this large scale is going to impact a lot of animals. We're also looking strategically at different stakeholders involved with these companies, so suppliers, right, clients, and so on. Okay, so Redditor recently shared a photo of our Miami Subway headquarters protest that included a face cut out of new CEO Jonathan Fitzpatrick. We've written on his LinkedIn a few times. If you're a Reddit user, support this post by upvoting positive messages. Okay, nice. Let's go do that. Let me make sure I'm on my right Reddit account here. All right, that's good. We didn't actually get the link to the page there, did we? Okay, good. Does anyone know who this guy is being protested outside the subway main office? Signs of megaphone. Couldn't slow down enough to hear the guy. Okay, nice. Well, there's Jonathan Fitzpatrick. Oh, look, we've only got 10 upvotes here, guys. Let's get over to this Reddit link. I'm going to put this in the chat. So this is, I guess, in the Miami subreddit. It's the new CEO, Jonathan Fitzpatrick, who has checkered record in private equity, but not sure what this particular profile gripe is. Super Shady as promised, use cage-free eggs. Yes, upvote. Luckily, Fitzpatrick used to be a company who was better about this. Yes, they have failed to follow through on their cage-free pledge. Literally thousands of hens in cages because of their failure to act. Hopefully Fitzpatrick will fix this. There's only 10 upvotes on this post, but, you know, let's get over there and give it some love. Oh. Yeah, okay, done. Nice commenting on Riverstone Health YouTube. And this is another Best Western thing, I think. Yeah. On YouTube. We haven't done any YouTube commenting yet for this campaign, so... Nice. There's a few other people who have been commenting. Look at this. Look at this. This is all the Humane League people. 6 of them. 6 of them only. If everyone in this live stream went and commented, we'd increase it by 50%. Oh, even more now. It just went up. So it's action.thehumaneleague.org, guys. If you start firing these off, we're going to cross paths on social media. Okay, so we are emailing the Subway CEO here. This one's a little out of date, I think. All right, whatever. Okay, it's only a few days old. It's like a week old. It's really all... Oh, this is... Oh, no, okay, it's Best Western again. So a lot of these are, I guess... Oh, sub-brand of Best Western. Yeah, okay, so a lot of these are just like different names of Best Western. Again, 90 million eggs a year, 319,000 hens. They said that they were going to go cage-free by the end of 2025, and they have not made good enough progress towards it. So we're turning up the pressure on Best Western, and also on Subway. That is what we're doing on the Humane League's Fast Action Network platform. Hey, Rebecca. How many people, and on average, I guess, maybe, do you think it takes to get a multi-billion-dollar company to change their supply chains? That is a good question. The thing, so I wouldn't necessarily think of it as how many people, right? Because there's a lot of leverage that you can do in terms of your strategy. So you'll notice here we're commenting on a bunch of different companies actually, and they're all, a lot of them are either sub-brands or they're connected, they're clients or they're suppliers, and then we're also doing multiple different routes. So we're commenting on social media, we're emailing people, there's calling people here. I haven't done any of the calling people, but yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. And we're doing this in a strategic way such that it's putting pressure on these companies from multiple different angles. So, I mean, one way of answering your question, Rebecca, as to how many people it would take, on one level, only one, right? Because if the CEO says we're going to do this now, we're going to make it a priority, it'll start happening. Now, that said, it's worth keeping in mind that I often say this, right? The CEO of Sainsbury's can't just decide to stop selling factory farmed products if all of the consumers still want cheap animal products, because they can just go to Tesco instead. So there is a bit of back and forth between the individual and the institutional decisions here. Because on the other hand, of course, when the norm is for eggs to be cage-free, as it is increasingly becoming in lots of parts of the world, when you are the only chain left doing still caged eggs, then, you know, you kind of look worse, you look out of date, and it's, you know, it's not a good look. So there is a bit of back and forth between the supply side and demand side, I guess you could think of it. Am I going to dox my info if I start filling out this form? Yes, I think I will. Oh yeah, there you go. I click on that and my address is, my home address is right there. Good. Right, first stream, so, you know, I'm going to get used to this sort of thing. All right. So this, we're filling out a feedback form to pray tell. Let's put general inquiries. On the people commenting this, not the consumers, like I'm vegan, so I don't eat eggs or meat. Yeah, that's a good point. That is largely the case, right? We're commenting about you guys should have cage-free eggs, and like if we go to these chains, we're not going to eat eggs in any case, right? I think that one part of this is obviously that's not necessarily obvious on the company side, right? Another part is that eggs is only a very small part of what Best Western sells, right? So I think this was meant to be a Google Maps link, was it? Yeah. How do I leave a review on this? So yes, if you were to go to Best Western, although you won't be ordering the eggs in any case, maybe now you'll say, well, I'm not going to go to a Best Western at all, right? I'm going to go somewhere else because I know that they have bad welfare policies and stuff like that. In any case, you'd be surprised how much difference it can make. Just, you know, a dozen people making a stink in the comment section. It will really, there'll be meetings about this at Best Western, right? There'll be conversations about it. Well, we've got to address this. Should we moderate? What should we do? We're getting emails about this, right? So I do think that, and yeah, these sorts of campaigns have had a lot of victories. They do get. There's a great graph somewhere about the increase of cage-free eggs since the movement started focusing on this, basically. And yeah, they do get a lot of victories, companies making pledges, following through. We're doing a bit of research on how that can be verified at the moment, and there's some interesting tools that they use to do that as well. Right, what are we doing here? Write a review. Have they given us a... Yeah. So they can have a 1-star review. Intercontinental Hotel does business with companies like Subway restaurants that are involved in horrifying animal cruelty scandals. Such disappointment. Protesters are outside defending animals. Look at that, we're getting points on Google reviews as well. Double dipping. So, isn't it hard to determine if the Humane League is causing any of these changes? I don't think that is that hard. I mean, you know, on one level, it's difficult to demonstrate that anything causes anything, right? But there are a bunch of companies that are specifically targeted by these campaigns that are then, those companies are the ones doing the pledges, right? And they'll do it in such a way that they are targeting sort of chunks of the market so as to try and get to a majority. in which case their leverage over the other companies increases. Part of that is just like you look bad if you're the only company not doing it, right? It's like sets the norm. And consumers' expectations and investors' expectations and everything else. Part of it is also that an interesting dynamic in these campaigns, once one company does take the pledge and go cage-free eggs, for example, when they are going into whatever industry association sort of lobbying meetings they're going into, their incentives have completely changed. Right, they might have been going to their industry association meetings and saying, we got to protect the caged eggs, right? We use caged eggs. We're really relying on caged eggs. So we got to have our industry groups pushing back if anyone tries to come after caged eggs. Well, now that they've gone cage free, that can be a competitive advantage. They will be certainly not, lobbying against any positive changes in that direction. They might even start lobbying for positive changes, because they'll now say, well, we're already cage free, right? We're already getting our eggs cage free, so we can have an advantage. If there's now a law, for example, that came in that you can't use caged eggs at all, our competitors are going to have to scramble around for new suppliers and new supply chains, and we've already got it down, right? So now when they're going into those meetings, their incentives have completely changed as to kind of how they approach it with respect to the rest of the industry. Yes, you're right, Rebecca. I mean, there certainly can be. It's not straightforward to always say the one thing caused the other. But if you were to make a big campaign that specifically targeted, let's not say Amazon, because it's a very generic company, and presumably there's a bunch of different organizations lobbying them to do a bunch of different things. But the pub down your road, let's say, right, to start sourcing cage-free eggs, assuming it's not a chain, right? Probably most pubs are chains now, right? But some small organization, right, and then you start seeing results from that. I think you can draw a stronger line there. And it's not quite analogous, but the point here is that obviously Humane League has more resources to leverage in these kind of campaigns. Although that said, there's quite a few comments on this one, actually. Oh, there's actually a bunch of comments on this one. All right, fair enough. I was going to say there's very few people commenting, but there's actually quite a lot. Still, though, we can make it more. This is action.thehumaneleague.org. So if you want to join in, I'll put it in the chat one more time. Oh, actually, I'll just copy it from here, right? If you don't have an account already on Humane League, go and make one. You can sign up and start joining in with this online activism. This is a really impactful way to help animals. So this is another Best Western one. Zion Wildflower Resorts. Zion Wildflower is a luxury glamping resort in Utah that operates under the World Hotels Collection, which is owned by Best Western. Wow, these are all such corporate webs of companies that own companies, aren't they? Zion Wildflower Resort. I mean, when you look at this, it looks like such a mom and pop little campsite, but this is owned by Best Western. All right. This probably was set up by some retired couple or something, and then got acquired by Best Western. Well, now they are... oh, look at that, I already commented on that one. Hard to tell if these charities are causing the change. 50% of it. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I don't know. 50% of the eggs in the US are already cage-free. That's big if true. That's cool. I mean, I think you're right in a narrow sense that we can't necessarily say that these campaigns are causing the changes, but these companies wouldn't be doing things in a more expensive way than necessary if there wasn't pressure groups drawing attention to that fact. Right, they would obviously just do things as cheaply as possible if there were no protesters or groups. Bloody hell, it's making me write my own text here. Okay. Yeah, they would obviously just do things as cheaply as they get away with if nobody was holding them to account, right? So this is a structured way of holding people to account, holding companies to account. Leave a negative review for Best Western Global Operations Center demand. Yeah. Okay. Look at that. There's already the negative reviews, the largest category already. That's cool. One star. Comment on World Hotels Facebook. Oh, my dog's barking a lot. I gotta go get him inside. What should I think of the fact that my viewership doubled when I went off the camera? Maybe I'll just leave it on the 5-minute timer as putting more numbers than I was. Send an email to Zion Wildflower Resort. So we're on the Humane League's Fast Action Network, guys. We are firing off some emails, some social media comments mainly to Best Western and Subway affiliates. 2 companies that failed to follow through on their cage-free pledges. We're actually quite far back now. This is August 20th. I've been doing these every week as well. They put a lot on here. It's a really good resource. Chair stream. Yeah, bring back the chair. Honestly, viewership doubled compared to when I left, and now it's gone down again. I'll just stream my chair. Oh, good stuff. Maybe the timer was implying that something exciting would happen. But alas, we're just doing social media comments at the moment. We might watch some debates later. I've been quite keen to rewatch my Paul Wood debate. That was the better of the 2 debates that I've had so far. I'm really struggling to find a next debate opponent, guys. I was going to make a video about my latest LinkedIn debacle, trying to bait some more people into debating. Just think, do we just do this? Let's do it again. There was also an interesting debate between Tobias Lennart and Paul Bashir that I have watched, but I would watch again. So maybe we'll look at that. Do you think AI could replace this in the future and send millions of these comments and emails? Yeah, I mean, I guess social media and email spam bots are already a thing to a large extent, right? I don't think that they are used on these campaigns. I would hope not. I think they're usually pretty easily identifiable. I mean, the purpose of these is not... If they were known to be coming from bots, it would kind of undermine it, right? Because the purpose is to demonstrate, here's a bunch of people who care about this and who are gonna, you know, not patronize your business now if you don't follow through on this. Of course, if it's all bots, then it's a bit pointless, right? I keep thinking we've already done these, but they all look similar. Yeah, there's a few debates which I wouldn't mind watching. Pretty sure Animal Ag uses AI for astroturfing campaigns. Yeah, most likely. Yeah, I mean, I don't go on Twitter anymore. I got off Twitter, but I never was a big Twitter user. But that seems like a pretty bot-infested hellhole now. And the bots do seem to pretty reliably go in one direction. Although I guess everyone calls each other bots now. Who knows? Leave a 1-star review for the sub where we recently protested. Nice. Yeah, there we go. This is quite hard to find, the review thing. Stay away from Subway. Nice. All right. We'll do, oh, that's another cool one. We're not going to do that. It's another cool one. And have I completed Fast Action Network? That's crazy. Surely not, right? I've completed it. Well, they're all they're all cool ones, the only ones that are left. Callers? Any callers? Guys, if you go and do these, go ahead and like my comments. Oh, actually, I'm going to get a bunch of notifications from people commenting on the post afterwards, hopefully. And when I say a bunch, I mean up to 7. Okay, I guess we've completed Fast Action Network, guys. That's pretty cool. All right, I want to... Let's re-watch, or let's watch, I should say, my Paul Wood debate. I've been wanting to re-watch this for a little while. I watched it all the way through once right afterwards. It's really weird doing a debate, by the way. I enjoyed this a lot. But it's really weird in the sense that it's very difficult to tell how well you're doing in the moment, or at least I felt that it was. And it's only really after the fact that you can have a chance to watch it and digest it a little bit, and see, you know, how it's going, like evaluate things kind of after the fact. It's very difficult to judge when you're in it. All my suggested wrestling videos on the side. Been watching a lot of WWE videos in my spare time. I should fall asleep with it. That's pretty based. Okay, let me mess my OBS settings real quick, because this is not going to come through with sound currently. There you go. Now you can hear my lo-fi now, huh? Someone shout in the chat if the sound is not working on here. I think it should come through, but let me know if it doesn't. You're the only one, Paul, who wants to talk to me. They're all shy.
I'm not sure they're shy, Chris, but your style is not one that appeals to everybody. I'm a big boy. I don't really mind a bit of robust discussion. I don't know that you'd have too many of the Dublin Declaration scientists who would argue that animal-based protein is not good for your health. So, you know,
well, the claim is that we need meat to be healthy.
Look, I think in general the answer to that is yes, we do.
I don't think that is correct. In the case of red meat, the authors said,
Chris, by all means,
we shouldn't
I'll be happy to have a look at those. I'm happy,
yeah.
you know,
I will do, yeah.
Post them. I haven't read them.
Yeah. Well, I'll just tell you, I can give you.
Anyone is suggesting that we should change our recommendation around smoking.
Well, they're certainly not, but they are suggesting that we should change them around red meat, given the same level of standard of evidence. Okay, I'm joined today by Paul Wood, who has agreed to have a debate about the Dublin Declaration with me. Thanks so much for joining me, Paul.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. There's been a lot of people damn, people are saying in the chat that it's lagging. It might be too much for my computer to handle to stream this. I'm not joking. It's pretty pathetic if so, isn't it? I have had this problem before when it's coming through OBS. Let me see if there's anything I can do to stop. Ah, no. Clicked onto a WWE
Animal
video.
suffering, animal F.
Chris.
Alright. Okay. Stream looks like it stopped completely. Oh, it's super laggy. Okay. Can you guys hear me in the chat now? It's just when the video is playing that it doesn't, or am I laggy? Yeah, you can send me an article to look at for sure. Let me know if I am audible though. It looks like the stream is working now. Fixed now? Okay, nice. It must. Okay, I guess I can't play the video. Let me see if it works if I do it on crappy quality. Hey, 'cause we don't want it to be that bad quality. Alright, we could live with this, right? Let's see if this works. If it starts lagging again, I will sack off the debate viewing. I'm actually getting a new computer soon, and that is going to fix these woes. I'm aware of using a bit of a crap computer currently.
Therefore, we shouldn't make
I'll be happy to have a look.
So let's try watching this, right? If it's too laggy, we'll sack it off and do something else. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat if it works, basically, right? If it doesn't, if it starts getting laggy, we'll sack you.
Look at those. I'm happy.
Yeah,
You know,
I will do.
always
Yeah,
post them. I haven't read them.
yeah.
I
Well, I'll
don't
just
think
tell you, I can
I
give
don't
you.
think
I guess I can't
anyone
play the
is
video.
suggesting that we should change our recommendation around smoking.
Well, they're certainly
both
not,
red
but they are
and-
suggesting that we should change them around red meat, given the same level of standard of evidence.
You can post it here if you can. Rebecca.
Okay, I'm joined today by Paul Wood, who has agreed to have a debate about the Dublin Declaration with me. Thanks so much for joining me, Paul.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. There's been a lot of people involved with the Dublin Declaration who are not so willing to discuss. Would you like to give a bit of an introduction to yourself? And I can do the same, and we can talk a bit about how we got here before we get into it.
Sure. So I'm Paul Wood. My original sort of PhD was in immunology back in '82. I've spent my career across sort of
They are suggesting
biology, vaccines, and drugs in particular.
This seems to be working all right at the moment, right? Someone let me know in the chat.
I was in CSIRO, the National Research Organisation, for 13 years, and it's probably where, from my research, has probably had the most impact, because I ended up inventing a new way of diagnosing TB, which is now the standard of care around the world. So people get diagnosed early, get treated, so it leads to sort of essentially thousands of people lives saved each year. So I was quite young. I was only 30 when I did that. I then moved into industry with companies like CSL and eventually Pfizer Animal Health in the US.
The lo-fi is actually on the debate video. This is a bad habit of mine. I'm realizing that I need to tone down the lo-fi when I'm doing, serious combos.
Leading large research teams, developing vaccines for animals and also drugs. Came back to Australia in 2012, and then I've sort of broadened out. I've done a range of things for both profit and not for profit. So I was on the dairy board, Australian Dairy Board, for
And it's quite bad that the lo-fi is actually on the debate video, isn't it? Let's be honest.
6 years. I was on the board and the chair of GALVMED, the Global Alliance for Livestock Medicine. So that's working with smallholder farmers in Africa and India, funded through the Gates Foundation and the UK government. I chair an
Man, I didn't think he was going to give his whole CV at the start of this debate. Jesus, how long does he go on for? This is like pretty much what the rest of the debate looks like, by the way. It's like quite long monologues from this guy. And I start interrupting as soon as I
business.
feel like
It's a bit of a sideline.
The intro might have been a bit too soon there.
I'm on the Scientific Advisory Committee for the Global Methane Hub.
Just reading off his LinkedIn, honestly.
I'm on the board of the Australian Academy of Technology, Science and Engineering, and an adjunct professor at Monash University. So a broad range of sort of interests are both across animal health, human health.
Nice. Okay, thanks so much for the introduction. I'll give a brief introduction. My audience will know who I am, but for the benefit of everybody watching, I'm Chris Bryant. I'm a researcher. I run a company called Bryant Research. We do social science as well as modelling on food systems change broadly. And relevant to this conversation, I'm the lead author of a prominent critique of the Dublin Declaration, which will
afterwards we'll watch the Batista versus Triple H full rivalry. No, I'm just kidding.
We'll be discussing today. This is a bit gets onto how we got here, I guess. We've got the Dublin Declaration, which I think it's fair to say is a document which defends global livestock production and consumption. And we've got my claim that it is junk science. And Paul is presumably on the other side of that claim. We're definitely going to discuss a lot about the Dublin Declaration. There's also a few other things that I've noticed as disagreements that we might have that we can get into as well. You're the only one, Paul, who wants to talk to me. I can't get, any of the others. I can't get Pierre Ederer or Colette Castor or, my big fish, Frederick Leroy. They're all shy.
I'm not sure they're shy, Chris, but your style is not one that appeals to everybody. It is what it is, but it tends to get rather personal at times, and that's not a scientific thing. That's just it appeals to your audience clearly. I'm a big boy. I don't really mind a bit of robust discussion, but the fundamentals of why the Dublin Declaration came about was that people got a bit frustrated with some of the non-scientific arguments being thrown out, and created a forum for scientists to talk about what was the actual data that existed around where livestock fitted into our global food system. That's what started off that meeting in 2022 in Dublin, and then last year there was a follow-up meeting in Denver. And I think there's now something over 1,200 signatures to the declaration. So it really just states that livestock are an important part of the system, and here is the science that backs that up.
Well, I think that it's frustration with unscientific claims and sort of lack of context given to the evidence and so on that is also motivating a lot of the response to the Dublin Declaration. I think that it's clear the Dublin Declaration is telling a very selective part of the story. Would you agree with that?
No. I mean, I'm happy to debate any of the technical detail. It puts...
My main criticism of the Dublin Declaration overall is this thing about just focusing on the areas where they can argue for some benefit of livestock. So they talk a lot about livestock in the developing world, they talk a lot about regenerative systems, and they really don't acknowledge at all that this is like 2% of all livestock in each of those cases. So they're ignoring the vast majority of livestock. This is why I'm putting to him, this is telling a very selective part of the story. And he says, no, I don't think so at all.
Forward a case that basically points out historically, why was livestock an important part of our food system? What is the current data around where the position and particularly nutrition? I mean, nutrition's been a pretty hotly debated area. I'm not surprised people get pretty confused because they've been told various things at various times. And part of that is it's not one of the areas of science where it's as easy to do the sort of fundamental controlled studies that are the standard of science. So you end up with a lot of observational studies. And what time has told us, these observational studies are pretty weak on the data.
Now that I'm listening back to this, I'm more and more convinced that he doesn't actually know the details of the studies that he's talking about. Observational studies are pretty weak on the data. That doesn't really mean anything. And you can... I mean, it's interesting that whenever I'm talking about the studies in this interaction, I'm using the terminology that's used in the studies. I'm talking about the burden of proof methodology. I'm talking about the star rating system that they use in this evaluation, everything like that. I never hear any of that stuff from Paul Wood. He just knows that it's about observational studies being bad. And I'm not that convinced that he properly understands what that means either, based on some of our interactions on LinkedIn afterwards, where he's appealing to what would quite clearly be observational data in the same place. So I don't think that he has a very good understanding of the criticisms of the observational studies or what the point is meant to be there basically overall. I genuinely don't think he understands this stuff very well. And I am not, the king of understanding this set of studies. As I say to him in this debate, like I didn't know very much about these studies that we're going to go on to talk about in the global burden of disease section. But I feel like I know more than Paul Wood because he did not seem to understand this part at all.
We can get into some of the observational, epidemiology critique, and I know you like to bring up the global burden of disease study, but I want to stay on the claim at the moment that the Dublin Declaration is kind of selective in the parts of the story that it chooses to tell. I mean,
credit to myself here, I do think they did quite a good job in this debate in general of bringing it back to the point that we're actually meant to be discussing. Right, it's not that easy to keep on a point like this and just, he does a long monologue and starts going on about health, nutrition, and different observational studies and blah, blah, blah. But that's not what we're talking about at all, right?
The Dublin Declaration is kind of selective in the...
We're talking about whether the Dublin Declaration is selective in the story that it tells. That's the question that I asked. Well, quite a long answer about all this other stuff that was not what I asked about. And he's trying to kind of move the conversation to his talking points in his study that he wants to talk about. And he's going to say that there's no significant health risks associated with red meat consumption based on this study that he goes on to talk about. But I'm like, well, yeah, that's not what I'm asking you about at the moment. I'm talking about the Dublin Declaration being selective.
Parts of the story that it chooses to tell. I mean, the critique that I led focuses on the fact that the Dublin Declaration really is predominantly talking about...
Hey, Jeremy Loeb's in chat. Nice to see you, Jeremy. Smash that like and subscribe.
Agroecological systems, regenerative agriculture, so-called, and livestock in the developing world, with really very little to say at all about the majority of livestock, which are factory-farmed livestock in developed countries. So that's why I say that it has a selective approach.
Look, again, we can get into the data on that. So yeah, look, if you look at fish and you look at poultry and you look at pigs, then they're mostly farmed in confined areas, and the level of confinement will vary dramatically around the world. But if you look at ruminants, it's actually on a global basis only about 2%. So only about 2% of ruminants are actually farmed in confined. The rest of them are actually in paddocks.
Right, but so, they're all... Again, here he's going to go and talk about ruminants because he knows it's an area where there's like a low proportion of animals being factory farmed. But ruminants are a tiny minority of all livestock. He made a claim at some point that, not in this debate, but in a previous video that I saw, that most, you might say in this debate actually, most livestock are on natural pasture, which is just not true at all. The vast majority of livestock are factory farmed chickens. Well, factory farmed fish, in fact, if you count, vast majority of land animals are factory farmed chickens. So I don't know where he's got that from at all. I guess he's just talking about cows, but even then that doesn't seem like it's going to be true. Cows in Australia, maybe?
Also a tiny fraction of all livestock.
No, look, ruminants are not a small fraction of livestock. I mean...
Yeah, they are. He wants to say they're not a small fraction of animal products, right, which is the claim he sort of evolves to, and he wedges in, we're going to talk about milk in this as well, so that we can count, double count the cows. But they are a small proportion of all livestock, yes. If you look at all livestock, how many cows are there, how many chickens are there, how many pigs are there? It's something like 95% of the land animals are chickens. So he wants to talk about ruminants, and they absolutely are.
Do you want to work on, if you work on numbers versus weight, so if you look on the weight, I mean, yeah, sure, but cows are a pretty big animal, and even sheep and goats. So again, it really comes down to the biomass as distinct from the numbers of animals. We're looking at numbers.
Well, okay, but that's fine, but then he's moving the claim. Right, he's talking about, I said they're the minority of all livestock, which is accurate. And we're talking about livestock conditions.
Yeah, fish and poultry are right up there. But they're also the dominant species that we eat now. So, pigs is the major, about 33% of animal based is pigs. Poultry is not far behind that. And then you get down to about
33% of animals. Is he saying of animal protein, I assume? Again, if you're talking about just the number of animals, pigs are going to be a tiny number compared to chickens.
22% with cattle and buffalo, and then about 5 or 6% with goats and sheep. So
yeah, I've got to say,
yeah, he's talking about quantity of meat, I think.
Well, pardon me, finish your point.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to, feel free to interrupt me as well if you disagree with something that I'm saying. That way we can have a bit more of a back and forth. So I appreciate the distinction between the number of animals versus the quantity of meat, right? If you're talking about number of animals, cattle are going to be, less than 1%, right? But if you're talking about quantity of meat, it's a little bit higher than that. It's still only, from what I've seen, about 26% of all meat that's coming from ruminants.
That's I think that's roughly tallies with the figures I had, about 22% and 5 or 6% on sheep.
He wants to talk about ruminants a lot in this conversation. He's in agreement with me that it's a tiny minority of animals and a minority of meat. And that's really where he wants to talk exclusively.
So with 25% roughly. I mean, again, these numbers, we've probably got better data from obviously developed countries. It's a bit harder in Africa and India to actually track actual numbers, but I think we're roughly agreeing on what those numbers are.
So ruminants then you're saying are largely not factory farmed, which
figures about 2% of ruminants are, again, it comes down to what. And
but now he is talking about number of animals, right? 2% off ruminants. He is talking about the number of animals now, and it's important because it's part of a larger claim about whether the majority of animals.
And even then, no animal spends its entire life in a feedlot. So even though,
well, again, he's only talking about ruminants here, right? They're absolutely chickens and pigs that spend their entire lives inside factory farms.
Those figures are a bit hard because obviously the majority of animals are raised, bred in paddocks, and they move into feedlots for finishing. And that finishing can be anywhere from as short as 45 days to 180 days if you're going, say, for the Japanese market, which wants a really marbled animal.
So we might be looking at, less than 1% if we're talking about by number of animals, and about 27% if we're talking about weight of meat coming from ruminants. And it sounds like we're in agreement that for poultry and pigs and fish, the majority are factory farmed.
They're in confined. I think if you follow the CAFO terms, it's basically confined. Now, what that doesn't define is how confined is that. That's going to vary dramatically around the world.
It's another great thing that they love to do. Like when you do get them onto the difficult topics, let's agree that the vast majority of animals are on factory farms. They go, yeah, but the systems vary a lot around the world. You go to some places, the systems are completely different to other places. One place I went to had a completely different system. I went to another place, completely different system again. I'm like, okay, but they're all... We're talking about factory farms. We're talking about the majority of animals being on factory farms. You're going to try and basically obfuscate by implying that there's some vast differences, that, they're not... basically, some of these places are absolutely fine, as he goes on to say in this debate. In the majority of cases, animals are not suffering on factory farms, which is my favourite part of the debate. But we'll see that at the end.
In all of those species. So, let's take China, for instance. China doesn't probably have it now, but it had about 50% of the world's pigs were in China. And half of those were in large operations and half of those were in backyard operations. Now, since the advent of African swine fever, that figure has changed. I haven't checked.
That seems difficult to believe. He reckons 50% of the world's pigs were in China and 50% of those were in backyard farms. And that only 50% were in the large industrial units. That doesn't seem like it's going to be correct to me. No, I could be wrong. This is another trick that you got to watch out for, by the way. The majority of farms are not factory farms. Right, that could be accurate. That probably is accurate. But the majority of animals are on the minority of the farms which are factory farms. Right? It's like saying the majority of settlements are villages, not cities. Okay, but the majority of people live in cities, right? So that's another trick to watch out for with these kinds.
What it is now, but it's those sort of figures. If you look at Africa, then most of the poultry are going to be village chickens, but even they get confined at night because of predation. So, if you've got 20 chickens.
When I'm talking about animals in confinement, does he think that maybe I'm talking about when the villagers put their chickens in at night so that they don't get eaten by foxes? Is that what he thinks I'm talking about here? I'm talking about factory farms.
You put him in some sort of cage, generally in the home, because there's enough wild animals that eat them overnight.
Yeah, caged chickens are just actually in cages in farmers' homes to stop them getting eaten from foxes.
Time.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about like the village chickens that have to be put away to not get eaten by foxes and stuff like that.
I'm glad to see I was as biting live as I am retrospectively.
I mean, it sounds like we're in agreement though. The majority of animals and the majority of meat is coming from factory farms, right, around the world.
Yeah, if you as I said, pigs are around 30%.
Yeah, Leo agrees. The majority of animals, the majority of meat are from factory farms, and now he's just going to kind of say a bunch of stuff that sort of muddies that.
So the majority of animals and the majority of meat is coming from factory farms, right, around the world.
Yeah, if you as I said, pigs are around 30%, 3%, poultry around 32%. I mean, we've seen massive
32%
changes
of what? Sorry,
of the number of the meat that's eaten.
I see. Yeah,
so if you go to meat and look at weight of meat and that, so that gives you that balance as to sort of numbers versus.
And then you'd have a percentage of each of those that are coming from factory farms versus not, right? And I grant that the majority of the cattle would be not.
Yeah, so that's the figures that I'm just trying to see. I wrote these figures down. Yeah, pork 36%, poultry 33%, beef 24%.
This is not. This is not really answering my question. It's just going back to the numbers about how much of total meat is coming from each species. I'm talking about how much meat is coming from factory farms. Sheep and goats 5. I don't know what fish, but we know now that aquaculture accounts for 50% of the species. So all of that is obviously some level of confined.
Yeah.
It's going to vary from pens for salmon to shrimp to tilapia. Yeah, there's the varying again. It's going to vary so much. You just can't really say anything for sure about how much meat's coming from factory farms. So much variation. Yeah, it's going to vary around the world.
Yeah, so appreciating that there's some variation between countries and variation between species, but looking at the picture overall, that most meat is coming from factory farms, right? And this is not like a big, discussed really at all in the Dublin Declaration. I think it gets kind of these kind of half sentences that are buried in the middle of paragraphs and not very easy to interpret as being a critique, frankly. I mean, most of this is about ecosystem services and about, providing women a form of income and stuff like. We're talking about like 2% of meat around the world.
No, we're back to animals now. So if we're talking about meat, then
about 2% of meat that's produced and consumed in the lowest income countries, and I had a similar estimate of about 2% for.
That looked like news to him. Did you see his reaction there?
Yeah, about 2% of meat that's produced and consumed in the lowest income countries, and I had a similar estimate of about 2% for ruminants or meat from ruminants which are purely pasture raised.
Yeah, but again, I think we've got to just step back a bit. And when we talk about livestock, then obviously one of the biggest things with cattle and buffaloes is dairy. So we consume more dairy than we consume meat. So if we look at animal source protein, the most important source is actually dairy, because that's the dominant in Africa. Many.
He's really not answering the question about the majority of animals, the majority of meat come from factory farms. He said yes and then went on to change the answer. I'm trying to reiterate here and get him to accept this, and now he's going off on something else about dairy.
Animals, you can't afford to slaughter the animals. They're so valuable. India, obviously, for religious reasons. So actually, you consume more dairy than we do meat on a global basis.
Okay, so
what was the point of that? That was nothing to do with what I asked. I just didn't know how to react to come up.
That's fine, but So the majority of animals are on factory farms, the majority of meat
That's fine. And I just say the same thing again. I mean, there's a good reaction.
is coming from factory farms. You're sort of saying the majority of animal protein, maybe you could kind of find some metric whereby the majority is not coming from factory farms. But for the most part,
I'm not.
this
I'm
is
not
like
arguing. I'm not arguing on the factory farm business. I'm just saying that, you look at the context of the species, and when it comes down to ruminants, then the most important thing we take from ruminants is milk.
I'm not arguing on the factory farmer business. So I'm taking this to be an acceptance that the majority is coming from factory farms. He has said yes to this before, but he really doesn't want to own it. I'm trying to get that point to land. He kind of half accepts it and pivots immediately.
And I did see the figures.
So no, it's not contested. He's not contesting then that the majority of animals and the majority of meat is from factory farms. He's not contesting that.
I didn't write it down, but again, you can look at it on a weight basis, or volume basis, the amount of milk. A country like India, which is the largest dairy population in the world, for instance. So while they're a predominantly vegetarian community, dairy is fundamental to their diet.
Yeah, so well, I'm just trying to focus on the claim that there's a selective focus in the Dublin Declaration, and my claim is that it's talking excessively, given the prevalence of such practices and the prevalence of meat which kind of falls in this category, is giving disproportionate focus and argument to meat produced and consumed in developing countries and in agroecological systems. It's really, I give the analogy sometimes, it's like we can imagine a document coming out of the aviation industry where they talk the whole time about these great new solar-powered planes. And now you can have solar-powered planes, and solar-powered planes don't cause any impact to the environment, and solar-powered planes are so great, and put this out there and kind of take it to lobby that we don't need to fly any less. And that is what is being done with the Dublin Declaration and meat consumption. It's not representing actually most planes that people are able to fly on.
I don't know if I picked up the point. I think basically what the Dublin.
Oh, that's such a good point. Right, I'm just saying this is a cynical industry document that is focusing on a minority of cases and saying these cases are fine, and then using that to extrapolate and say that the whole industry is fine. And the analogy to the aviation industry saying solar planes exist and therefore flying's not that bad, when in fact almost all planes are not solar planes, I think is extremely clear. I don't know how to not understand that.
What the Declaration is about is saying that animal-based food is critical to the welfare of our food system. That's fundamentally what it's saying. We can get into, but if you're at the highest level, it's fundamentally saying the animal-based food, meat and dairy, are very important to our food systems.
So it's such a nothing claim, right? I did not respond to my analogy at all and just said, well, the highest level, as you're saying, animal products are very important.
There's a whole thing about like the specific claims made in the Dublin Declaration and then what it tries to suggest and what it is used to then argue. Have you seen any of the things? Have you seen the study where they survey people about whether they found certain frames from the Dublin Declaration? Have you seen that study?
There are a couple of lengthy papers,
Lengthy. That's a no then.
critiques on the Dublin Declaration, and I think you'll find on the site you'll see, the various rebuttals to those. So,
yeah, the critiques are really lengthy, but we've done some nice rebuttals on the website.
I don't think there is a rebuttal to this one that I mentioned. I don't think there's a rebuttal to mine either. Let me check that. Yeah, there's no rebuttals to my paper still, I think. Let's see the other one.
Yeah, my failed control F.
Yeah, no rebuttal to that as well. So, funnily enough, there's a rebuttal to their original critique, which was that the Dublin Declaration made these misleading claims, invoked misleading frames. One of which was, we need meat to be healthy. One of which was reducing animal production.
Yeah, I changed the wording there because it's a very specific critique for the Dublin Declaration where they don't say anything that is technically incorrect, but they speak in a way which kind of leads you to conclusions which are incorrect. So they invoke these frames, right? One of them is meat is healthy. We can talk about some of the others here. And the whole trick of the Dublin Declaration is to be written in a way that kind of invites readers to draw this conclusion without ever saying the incorrect thing. And I don't know if Paul Wood didn't get that memo, but I draw him on several of the misleading frames, and he just bites on them, which you're not meant to do if you're a Dublin Declaration person, right? You're meant to leave it vague and say, well, we didn't actually claim that, right? And that's actually what they did in the response. But apparently Paul didn't get that memo, so I do get him to sign off on some of the misleading frames, which the Dublin Declaration was not meant to actually defend. It was just meant to pretend to defend. But we'll see that.
Production and consumption is not necessary or helpful to sufficiently limit the environmental impact of the food system. And when those critiques were made of the Dublin Declaration that it, suggested these claims, the authors on the rebuttals page didn't seek to defend those claims. They just said, no, we didn't say that. And
look, I think
subsequently the critics found empirical evidence that this was indeed inferred from what they had said.
Look, I don't know that you'd have too many of the Dublin Declaration scientists who would argue that
this is a great moving of the goalposts here you're about to see, right? The claim is we need meat to be healthy.
Animal-based protein is not good for your health.
Completely different claim.
So
the claim is that we need meat to be healthy.
Look, I think in general the answer to that is yes, we do.
This is the thing that he wasn't meant to bite on, right? Okay, obviously that's not true. Obviously we don't need meat to be healthy. There's not going to be defensible, right? And he said this, and he doesn't get the memo that he's meant to just be kind of pretending that this is the case and suggesting that this is the case. He's just said, yeah, you do need meat to be healthy, and that's just going to be obviously wrong.
I don't think that is correct.
Well, but Chris, what data do you want to look at?
I should have been firmer on that. I said, I don't think that is correct. I should have said, obviously not.
To talk about the data. If you talk about, the claims around the fact that there was linked to a range of diseases.
He's going to talk about global burden of disease again. This is nothing to do with the claim that you need meat to be healthy. He's going to say, well, there's been pushback on evidence that meat is unhealthy. That would not imply that you need it to be healthy.
With unprocessed meat, then that's been pretty extensively rebutted now by the global burden of disease. They actually corrected their own data, which was used by a lot of other groups. So in 2019, when they put out their report, they made some statements which were criticised by a range of people, and they subsequently published a review in Nature Medicine in 2022, which agreed that there was essentially little to no data.
We've got off the claim that you need meat to be healthy completely now, and it's on quite a lengthy. I can't remember if I brought it back.
Data linking the consumption of unprocessed meat to a whole range of diseases. So that was a pretty important, because it actually repudiated what they had said previously.
Yeah, so we can get into the global burden of disease stuff, and I disagree with your interpretation of what's been said on the impact of unprocessed red meat there. We can get into that. This is kind of a different claim.
Good, I did remember to get back to it. We're meant to be talking about, do you need meat to be healthy? We're not yet talking about, is there negative health effects from red meat?
To the frame invoked that we need meat to be healthy, right? We can talk about whether there are negative...
So we can get into micronutrient deficiency. So we know that micronutrient deficiency is a major problem around the world, severe problem
around the world. Again, we're going to go and talk about the developing world. We're going to talk about how there's malnourished people in Asia and in Africa. We're not going to substantiate the claim that you need meat to be healthy, right? Obviously, there's an incorrect claim, so we're not going to be able to substantiate that. But maybe we can talk around it and seem like we've substantiated it. It'll seem like we've made some kind of points here. This is not going to be an answer to evidence for the claim that we need meat to be healthy. He's talking about the developing world now. I should have interrupted more in this debate, right? Like, we're 2 seconds into his answer. I can tell this is going to be irrelevant.
In developing countries. But even in developed countries, when they look at say
You see me shifting around. I thought about interrupting. I'm like, oh.
women are in, of that sort of reproductive age, then over 60% will have one or more micronutrient deficiencies. So, and we know that sort of things like dairy and meat are very good at balancing. So when you get into micronutrient deficiencies, when you look at the work from Ty Beale from the GAIN.
That's another beauty, Ty Beale. We're going to have to talk to him at some point.
Institute or people out of the Ritter Institute, then a lot of the focus is actually on micronutrient deficiency.
Yeah, well, and again, that's fine. It's not directly addressing the claim that we need meat to be healthy. I mean, it's a very specific claim being made, right? Like, you cannot be healthy without meat.
All right, I'm pleased I stayed on the ball here. I will say this, in Paul's defense. This guy's in Australia, I'm in the UK, and we did this at 9 a.m. for me, which was like 7 p.m. for him. You know, I'm a young dude, fresh in the morning. Paul's an older professor in the evening. It's kind of fair if he wasn't quite as sharp here. But he's really not getting to the point. I'm glad that I remember and bring it back, and I seem to do it quite politely, but we're only 20 minutes into the debate, so we'll see how well my patience holds.
Is another way of putting that claim, which I don't think.
Well, the vast majority of population it's been demonstrated in that regard. I mean, the reality
I don't think
is
that's correct.
Well,
his claim here is the vast majority of the population has been demonstrated that they can't be healthy without meat. It's just not correct. He's way overextended on the claims that, again, we've got here from these frames that are meant to be implied by the Dublin Declaration. And the Dublin Declaration author's response was not to try and defend these claims, to say, well, no, we never actually said that. And I don't think Paul does not know the material very well, basically, and he's come in and said, well, actually, that is the case. You do need meat to be healthy. Anyone with a brain knows, right? There's vegans, there's 90-year-old vegans, there's vegans who've been vegans for 20 years. You clearly don't need meat to be healthy. That's just clearly not accurate. Nobody would try to defend this claim.
Let's have a look at what people's preferences are.
Now we're talking about people's preferences. What's that got to do?
Well, that doesn't really tell you about what they need to be healthy, right? People's preferences.
What are we going to do? Are we going to take
and...
away preference?
It's just changing the subject completely. Are we going to take away preference? Well, then again, that's just such a stupid framing, right? Obviously, we already take away people's preferences with respect to all sorts of things. It's a narrow analysis. Yes, we are going to take away preference, Paul.
We're going to take away preference. I mean,
it's just a different discussion about what's healthy, right? People prefer Mars bars.
Well, yeah, we know people aren't really good at that, but we also know that there's a lot of data. You go and talk to most nutritionists; they want people to have a quantity of animal-based food in their diet. They know it's good for us. We know fish is good for people. I mean, again, it's different species for different things, but we.
There's not any evidence they need meat to be healthy forthcoming, by the way, just to spoil that for you.
Know that people who eat, animal, have a reasonable amount of animal-based protein, have a very healthy diet. We talk about the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
So we know these things. I mean, the study.
None of that proves that you need meat to be healthy.
Studies on dairy.
It's just saying words now. The Mediterranean diets are so like word association.
Are overwhelming. There was a 6-country study showing that in elderly people, if you increase their content of dairy, we got 30% less breaks. We got 40% less falls. I mean, it's better than we get with most drugs.
The annoying thing with this kind of gish galloping and not answering the question directly and going off on different points, he is in saying all of this stuff, which I might want to respond to some of this. I might have, I know that study about dairy he's talking about is not actually misrepresenting or whatever it may be. But that's kind of what they want you to do when you have with them on a point that you know you're going to win. It's like pivot, gish gallop off about something else, and they're looking for me to grab onto that because it gets away from the original point that that I'm trying to force a concession on. So here the claim is we need meat to be healthy. It'd be very easy for me to get distracted and go off and chase down that dairy study that he's talking about. I just want him to get him to concede that this is not the case.
So I think the data on the importance. Now, can you exist without it? Yeah, there's a small group of
Okay, he's going to say there's a small group of people who can.
people who do, but
There's a small group of people who do. Okay, so yes, you can be healthy without it, right? Can we take this as a concession?
So I think the data on the importance. Now, can you exist without it? Yeah, there's a small group of people who do, but they can't do it without heavily supplementing.
Okay, that's fine. So that sounds like a concession that we do not need meat to be healthy. Hopefully I pick up and reiterate that.
And that comes at a cost.
Okay, so it sounds like apart from all the other stuff, we don't need meat to be healthy.
For the majority of people, they do, because supplementation is not something they can either afford or access.
That is such a bad response, man. That is just incorrect. I mean, look, again, he's going to say, oh, the majority of people are in China and India, right? It's like rural peasants or whatever. So, I mean, again, this is like a classic Dublin Declaration trick, right? He's going to talk about developing world and so on. Like, clearly we're talking in the context of Western countries that are consuming the majority of the meat, and we're talking about the claim, do you need meat to be healthy? He's sort of given a concession there. I've reiterated and said it sounds like you're saying we don't need meat to be healthy after initially he does. And now he's going to say most people can't access supplementation. Hopefully I say if you have access, or if you're somebody who can afford supplements, right, somebody who's watching this YouTube video probably, then you don't need meat to be healthy.
So if you talk about people and you talk about
So
diets,
it sounds like we're talking about the developing world again, though, right?
no, not at all. The micronutrient deficiency we see globally, as I just quoted one of the figures from Tybill, over 60% of women globally in childbearing age.
This is such a dumb trick, man. This obviously we want to be talking about where the majority of animal products are consumed.
Reproductive age, have one or more micronutrient deficiencies.
It's kind of orthogonal to the discussion that we're having, though. I mean, that could be true, like, they could be true regardless of whether we need meat to be healthy. This is not quite on the same.
Yeah, it just says lots of women have micronutrient deficiencies. Nothing to do with the claim that we need meat to be healthy. Do Homo erectus need to consume flesh in order to maintain a good level of health, right? As a species, as a biological functioning machine, do we need to eat meat? That is the question. He's almost gave a concession that no. He said there's a small group of people who do, but you can't do it without supplementation.
So you're saying if people can, for anyone who can afford supplements, they do not need meat to be healthy.
I wouldn't disagree. I wouldn't advise
I'm moving it again.
anyone to take supplements over meat because or dairy. To be
Not the question.
honest, because we know that the bioavailability of micronutrients is far better when they're associated with animal-based food. So when we know that iron, for instance, and we know that the quality of protein, about the only plant.
Again, all of these are kind of, it's little bits of bait for me to go and chase down, but I'm glad that I stayed on the point. Do we need meat to be healthy?
Plant-based protein that has a reasonable quality is soy. Now, if you get into a lot of the other staple diets, then the quality of the protein, like rice is one, for instance. Rice and oats have very poor quality protein. So if the quantities that you have to eat are quite high. So again, it's not just where it comes from. It's the fact that both on quality of protein and on bioavailability of micronutrients, we know that animal-based foods are superior.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, you're taking a different tack to the Dublin Declaration authors then, who, in their rebuttal to the claim that this misleading claim was invoked, they weren't trying to defend this claim, but you are going to defend the claim we need meat to be healthy. That's okay. You could take kind of a different.
I think for the vast majority of people, the answer is yes.
Okay, well that's all right. You're taking a
And-
different
and-
route to the other Dublin
And
Declaration.
again, I think the importance there is to distinguish. We're talking about animal-based protein here. So we're talking about milk, we're talking about dairy, we're talking about eggs. When we know in Africa, for instance, there's 140 million children with micronutrient deficient, which means they're runted and stunted, and they then have cognitive dysfunctions. Those children won't recover from that because they didn't get the essential nutrients in that first 5 years of age. An egg a day or a glass of milk a day would have completely prevented that. So yes, it is developing country, but that's where the nutrient issues are the greatest. But even in developed countries, we know that our diets aren't good. I mean, the one I think I've quoted before. Look at Jack Bobo's book on why smart people make dumb food choices. He explains a lot about why we continue. We know the data, but we continue to make bad choices. 40% of what in the Western world, 40% of what we consume has no nutritional value whatsoever.
And this is a dumb claim. I wish I'd be more confident to attack this. I'd attack it a little bit, but in my mind, I'm thinking no nutritional value whatsoever. That would mean no calories, right? I'm sure he's not saying 40% of what we eat has no calories. And I ask him about this, and he can't answer. He just assures me that he means exactly what he says. There has no nutrients. I didn't quite have the confidence in my interpretation of that to push back and say, well, that's dumb. But I really should have.
So if you wanted to start, that's published data. It's published by a range of people.
By no nutritional value, what does that mean?
Exactly what it says. It has no nutritional value. We can go in and look at it. If you look at Doritos, let's say.
This is so dumb, right?
There is no nutritional value in a Dorito.
There is nutritional value in a Dorito, right? He wants to say Doritos are not particularly healthy or something like that, right? There's not no nutritional value. It does have calories in there, has fats and carbohydrates, right? Of course it does. Of course there is nutritional value. There's such a... I should have attacked this more. Look at his face, the nice pause.
Alcohol doesn't have any nutritional value. I mean, there's actually quite nice maps where people have pointed out.
He might be using a specific meaning of the term nutritional value, but I think I'm being too charitable. I think this is just bollocks.
They put a picture of the average diet in actual food groups and shown the fact that, this is the 40%. So you can go in and look at what the data is on those foods. So that would be a great start in many countries. If we wanted to actually tackle the obesity epidemic, we'd start with that 40%. Let's cut these things out. And look, people know it, but they still eat it. So that's one part of our problem in our diet system, in our food system.
Yeah, I've got some notes on. We can talk about the obesity thing as well, because I know you and I have had some back and forth on that issue previously. It sounds like you are resisting me on the we need meat on we don't need meat to be healthy, right? You're saying that we do need meat to be healthy.
For the majority of people, the easiest way for them to get a balanced diet.
But this is a different claim, though, right?
No, that a balanced diet is a healthy diet. Easiest way.
You're talking about the easiest way, and the majority of people. Do we need meat to be healthy? That's my question.
Well, for the majority of people, the answer is yes.
Okay, but you're not. So you're not talking about the easiest way, though, right? They need it.
He knows he's wrong on this point, but he can't admit it, right? I think this is number 2 in this debate already that I feel like I've got him on, frankly. The first one was the ruminants. I said ruminants are a tiny minority of all livestock. He said, no, they're not. They are actually, okay, then they are a minority of meat, if not a tiny minority. Right, and the main point about that is he wants to talk about ruminants and the conditions that ruminants are in, and they're they're only in feedlots for the end and stuff like this, doesn't want to talk about chickens and pigs on factory farms. And so I'm making the point that that's a tiny minority of all livestock, and he resisted me at first, then he conceded that, kind of. The second one was about this we don't need meat to be healthy point, which, I mean, I've got him cooked, surely. He says the easiest way. He said, he talks a lot about the developing world. Lot of flowery language, but no reason for us to think that we need meat to be healthy. And in fact, lots of reasons for us to think that he doesn't quite think that, right? He's trying to kind of weasel different ways into not quite saying that, much like the Dublin Declaration.
Look, again, what do we know about diets? We know that in the Western world, about 14% of people have what we would say a nutrient deficient diet. And a lot of that is driven by convenience.
Okay, I'm not getting to a clear thing on whether we need meat. Though. So you're basically saying yes.
This is good. I start to interrupt him more at this point. I can tell he's about to go on a whole other thing about convenience foods and ultra-processed foods are the real problem and stuff like this. We're not going to get to a clear answer to whether we actually need meat.
Yeah, so it's feeding the children fast foods and things like this. We know that convenience has taken over. We know that the rise in highly processed food is now
This is all
washing through the world.
All right, well, we can go on to a more general thing about. Okay, if we, I don't know, I don't want to burn all our time on that. I know we've got a limited amount of time. So another misleading thing that.
Yeah, that's another. Pardon me. There was another component. Pardon me. There was another component of this debate. I knew that I would have a limited amount of Paul's time. So that's another reason why you can't chase down every misleading thing.
The Dublin Declaration is said to invoke.
You have to actually be very selective about which fights you pick, even in a debate, because it's so easy to get distracted and dragged off down some rabbit hole.
And again, the author's response was to deny having said this, right? It's not to actually defend the claim I'm about to give, but subsequently, again, empirical evidence found that this idea is in fact invoked. The authors deny invoking it. The idea is reducing animal production and consumption is not necessary or even helpful to sufficiently limit the environmental impact of the food system. Do you agree that we need to decrease our consumption of animal products in developed countries for environmental reasons?
I think we need to decrease our consumption of food in general. If you look at our obesity epidemic.
I'm trying to talk about him for environmental reasons. He's going to go on to talk about obesity and food in general.
No, would that include animal products, or would that include animal products?
Well, I think it's all proportional. I mean, you'd start with the 40% that has no nutritional value. I mean, that could be a good start.
I'm actually talking about environmental impact here, but he's still on nutrition.
Okay, but
so a blanket comment to say, hey, if you're obese, cut out your animal-based protein. No, that would not be good nutritional advice.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so there is the obesity thing, which we can talk about. At the moment, I'm talking about the environmental impact there. This is the second.
So let's talk about environment. So we know that when it comes down to greenhouse gases in particular, that our
should have actually stayed on the obesity thing there, because there was another sort of dumb alleyway that had him down where he didn't want to say the thing but couldn't say. He talks about how obesity is a big problem and this is the biggest health problem and all the rest of it. Now he wants to say that's about processed foods, but he does say we need to eat less food overall, we need to eat less of anything. But when you say, do we need to eat less meat, he will and ah and not really want to respond to that. And yeah, there's a whole other bit. I can't remember if that bit ends up in this debate.
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Livestock are about 12%. Okay, that's the biggest issue that people are looking at when it comes to the environmental. That's why the livestock industry, in particular, is spending so much money on looking at ways we can reduce, particularly for ruminants, it's methane. For pigs and chickens, it's different greenhouse gases. It's not the same because methane emission is largely a fact of rumination. So it's ruminants where we're looking at methane in particular. So the industry and the industry has quite steep targets for reducing. So when I was on the dairy board, our target was a 30% reduction from the baseline of 2005. And we're well on the way to that.
Does any of that include decreasing consumption? Because that'd be one really easy way to decrease those emissions, right? Rather than doing things like changing diet and genetics and stuff, just consuming less of it.
It depends on who you're giving advice to. If you're talking to someone who's morbidly obese, yeah, it would probably include it. But if you're talking
nice, okay, good, all right, good. Obese people should eat less meat. Thank God.
To young children, elderly, women of childbearing age, no, you wouldn't recommend it. You'd actually recommend cutting out other things.
But if you're talking to, say, if you're talking to like a government in terms of reducing emissions,
then again, what you need to balance in is nutrition. So the advice you would give to people would not be blanket. It would not make any sense on a nutritional basis.
You do have to talk about overall level of consumption there, right? There's, I think I say this in a minute, right? There's a certain total amount of meat eaten in Australia, right? So X tons or X kilos, whatever, right? That amount up or down. Now you can say, well, different populations and women and children and blah, blah, blah. Overall quantity, does it need to go down for the environment? Yes, is the answer that I'm looking for.
To argue, it's like let's have a look at one of the growth areas in alternative proteins has been alternative dairy. Now that hit about 10% in Australia, about 15%. It's sort of flattened and gone down a bit since then. But at the same time, you would not recommend to parents to substitute cow's milk for oat milk, on a nutritional basis for children under 5.
I think for a certain type of debate viewer, it looks like I'm doing well in this because there's clearly points that he cannot address. But I think my worry with this is that he had his talking points that he wants to go to every time, and now he's going to talk about how parents shouldn't give plant-based milk to their children or something, and right, and he's looking at some article about this, no doubt. It's not really what I'm asking about, and although I did get a little bit better at interrupting and redirecting conversation later on, I let him kind of go on some of these points longer than I should have.
I would not recommend it for elderly people. We've got the data that's showing increasing dairy is actually really good because of the calcium. So when you get food recommendations, they must be specific for the needs of those populations.
And with respect to the obesity rate, which I know is something that we have had some back and forth, right? We've got, I think, similar rates of overweight and obese in the UK and Australia. It's majority, right? It's upwards of 50% are in this category.
Yeah, it depends on how people morbidly obese to obese, but it's shockingly high, and
these people could do with eating less animal products.
They could do a lot of eating less of everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, I lived in the US for 5 years.
That would include animal products, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, but again, it's going to be contextual for where that person is.
I'm glad I got that. That's actually something he resisted me on LinkedIn. He did not want to say that obese people should eat less meat. I was ready for him to resist me on that here, but he kind of gave a soft concession, so that's good.
As I said, for young children, no, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd cut out a lot of other things. Sugar would be a really great one. We're seeing this debate in the US now that Coca-Cola is going to move from concentrated, syrup to sugar cane, as if that's actually going to have an impact. I mean, we've got crazy stuff happening when it comes to, what governments are recommending, unfortunately, because it's highly political.
Okay. All right. So good. So the people who are obese, for the most part, we do agree that they should be eating less meat and they should also be eating less of other stuff, right? Processed foods and other stuff that you mentioned.
Well, I'd start with the 40% that has no nutritional value. That would be a pretty good start.
It's okay. Well, we can talk about priorities within that. Sounds like we're in agreement that that eating fewer animal products is going to be a part of that, right? And of course, this can be some of the processed foods, right? People are eating a lot of crap that is processed animal foods.
Yeah, look, again, depends on where the person's at. And as I said, the biggest problem in the US is when you go into
No, all Lord processed foods are actually meat alternatives. Did you know?
a restaurant, they sell on the basis of the quantity of food they put in front of you. I would go into a restaurant and have a meal, and I would take away 2/3 of that. I'd have another 2 meals.
Sure.
It is ridiculous.
In a minute, I say something like, well, Paul, as a Brit and Australian, at least we can bond over our shared dislike of Americans. And he unironically says, some of my best friends are Americans.
But it's so ingrained in the US culture. If I wanted to put on an event to get people to turn up, in Australia, I'd just supply alcohol. People would turn up. In America, donut holes. I mean, it's so ingrained in the culture. And what is sad there is you see morbidly obese young children.
Yeah,
that is a real process, and that's why this sort of the GLP-1 inhibitor craze has taken off, because people want an easy fix. They don't want to change their diet. They want an easy fix, but they're not long-term solutions.
You've stumbled onto a key thing we're going to have in common as English and Australian, respectively, which is hating on Americans. We've found some common.
I don't hate Americans. I've got a lot of American friends. I hate the American food system.
Right.
Because unfortunately it's quantity, it's not quality, and it's so dominant in the restaurant system. Particularly in the chains. I mean, they've got a difference here. We have sort of like your fast food and then your restaurants. There they have fast food, and then they have all their restaurant chains, and then they have quality restaurants.
Someone said I should consider having a moderated debate next time, which I would definitely consider doing. I think it would really help to keep us on track and sort of hold us both accountable to talking about what we're meant to be talking about, because there's a lot of points here where there's quite lengthy diversions in my view when we're meant to be on a particular point. Here we're kind of in between the topics. We're going to go on to talk about the global burden of disease in a minute.
But the first two, fast food and food chains, dominate.
Yeah. And so on the obese issue then, with food consumption going down, animal products as being a part of that, would you agree with me that the 66% who are overweight or obese are very likely eating, I said 80% plus of the meat? I think we could quibble about the exact amount, but it's probably going to be more than 66%, right? They're that portion of the population they're eating more than their population average.
I haven't seen any data on that, on people cutting it that way. We do know that morbidly obese people eat just far too much, but mostly they eat too much sugar. They eat too much refined, ultra processed food. They don't eat enough fiber. So there's a range of things we do know. I don't know I haven't ever looked at figures to that on a percentage.
Fair.
But you're gonna have people. I mean, you're gonna have people who, whatever their food preference is, they gorge out on it. I mean,
so 80% is my sort of ambitious bar. But would you agree with me that 66% is eating a majority of the meat? Very likely.
I don't know what they think is. I mean, if we look at global diet, 80% of our diets are plant-based and 20% are animal-based.
This was this was one of the points that we had been debating in LinkedIn comments previously. It's kind of like a bit of a stupid side point, but my contention was that if there's 66% of people who are obese or overweight, it's likely that they're eating more than 66% of the meat, and therefore the majority of the meat is in the category being eaten by people who need to reduce their meat consumption. I think he kind of knows that I was right there in retrospect, but he's going to say, I don't know the exact numbers.
I thought it was 70-30, but I went and looked it up in prep. It was quite surprising. So it's 80% on a...
Oh, nice to know that he did look some stuff up in prep, and he wrote some stuff down and everything. Appreciate that. Didn't help him too much in the debate, but there you go.
Global basis. Now then you shift from some...
But I just mean like of the meat consumed in Australia. Right, we got all the meat consumed in Australia.
Yeah.
At whatever amount of kilos per, amount of tons per year. we've got 2/3 of the population are in this overweight or obese category. If you had to guess, what proportion of that big chunk of overall meat are they eating?
Look, I don't know, and again, I put dairy in there, so I think you got to actually look at animal-based food as distinct from meat.
Well, you could cut it either way, but I mean, if you had to guess, would you
consume more
say?
dairy.
Okay, well, all right. Well, let's just talk about meat for the sake of. I mean, look, you could do it either way, say meat and dairy, right?
That was a weird thing to obfuscate on as well. Like,
but if you had to guess, are you saying as
it's probably going to be the same story, right? They'll be eating the majority of meat and dairy. Then it doesn't help him.
more than 66% or less? I'm guessing it's more, right? Because they're obese and overweight.
Look, if you look at the figures in Australia, we're about the same as a lot of countries. We've got about 1% vegans, we've got about 10% vegetarians, and the rest eat meat to certain different levels.
And the vegetarians and vegans are probably underrepresented in the obese group as well, right? So you got the obese group there.
I think vegans definitely underrepresented. We can discuss why that is. But we also know with vegans that people who
They'll chuckle there about vegans not being obese.
are very focused on their diet. So you'd expect them to not eat a lot of messy, stuff that they would consider like lots of sugar, etc.
Whereas the obese people are chowing down on the animal products all the time.
And sugars. Let's be honest. I mean, our biggest problem is sugar.
There's some good dubs in this debate.
It's not.
That's okay. I mean, that's fine. We can talk about. I don't know. I don't have like strong views on sugar, but that's. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of an aside. You can
if you actually look at people who are studying type 2 diabetes, then sugar is the thing that they focus on most. I am a type 2 diabetic. Okay, so when I go along and says what shouldn't I eat, then I shouldn't eat things with a lot of added sugar. I can eat fruit; it's got natural sugars in it, but I shouldn't eat things that are like most drinks. Okay, any colas, actually even fruit juices generally have added sugar.
That's all fine. I don't have much to say one way or another about the sugar thing. So I want to move on through. We didn't really talk. I guess we didn't really talk too much about the environmental thing. Or you're saying that you can't make kind of blanket statements because it needs to be nutritionally appropriate. But it also sounds like you agree with me that we've got this majority who are obese or overweight. It's likely that they're consuming a majority of the animal products and they need to reduce their consumption of animal products. I'm thinking that means that overall quantity of meat that gets consumed is going to go down, right?
Yeah, look, again, we go back to it. They need to reduce their food overall. And I'm assuming that if they are eating predominantly meat-based food, then that will be included in that. But it's that sort of group. I wouldn't.
If felt like a little bit of a weasel as well, because it's not that they'd have to be eating predominantly meat-based foods in order for reducing meat to improve their health. They could be eating predominantly some other sort of food, but they're still eating too much meat-based food. Because he's going to want to say, oh, well, for this person, it's not more than 50% of their diet, and therefore it's no problem, right?
Be recommending it to.
But that said, this is like way more of a concession than I got on LinkedIn beforehand. So,
elderly, children, or women of childbearing age.
So the majority of people.
I'm actually going to put that as the third debate dub. Obese people should reduce their meat. First one was the cows being the minority of livestock. Second one was we don't need meat to be healthy. And the third one was obese people should eat less meat.
Actually, those groups, I've already got the majority. If we look at women, elderly,
what about obese? What about obese women?
That's one of my favourite moments of the debate as well. He wants to say all of these groups shouldn't eat less meat. I said, what about obese women? Come on.
Look, again, what we do know with obesity in a lot of countries, it comes with age. So there's a
well, fat old women then,
an age criteria there. So yeah.
Well, Well, that's yeah, okay. There's nothing to do with whether they should eat less meat.
If they're obese, they shouldn't be. All right, I don't want to spend forever on this. I think we've got.
No. Oh,
I think we've got
sorry.
it. Like the total quantity of meat here, the majority of which being consumed by people who need to eat less of it. Yeah, I'm satisfied with that. Okay, so then we have some contention with those frames on the misleading point. There's some other stuff I could say about Dublin Declaration. A bunch of this is about just really bad scientific practices and kind of shadiness around the Dublin Declaration. They didn't properly disclose conflicts of interest until it was called out by journalists. It's published in this weird kind of industry-owned journal. It's got no proper citations, but it's got like a link to go and see citations in this recordings. I'm not sure if it's...
Sorry, I'm a bit surprised there because obviously we presented and the videos, those videos of all the presentations, but then there were also papers were prepared and published in referee journals with full citations. I was one of the authors of those. So you can go in and actually have a look at publication and you can see the citations. So I'm not sure where the comment is there's no citations because, again, there's videos you can watch. There is published papers in referee journals.
Well, there's no proper citations for specific claims, right? The Dublin Declaration itself just has like a sentence at the end that says, for scientific evidence, see this whole journal edition, which is not really, that's not really citing.
The Dublin Declaration is one page. It's actually a statement. It's not a referee, it's a statement. And what it then says is we think science should dominate this discussion. And here are, you can go and actually look at the thing, here are all the presentations.
You'll see in the Dublin Declaration, they gesture broadly towards this whole journal special issue, and you go here for the scientific evidence, right? And it does not map onto what they are suggesting to be the case in the Dublin Declaration. That's why I'm criticising the lack of proper citations, because they don't actually cite specific points that they're saying. They say a lot of vague stuff that kind of gives this overall impression, and then they say, go look at this whole special issue, which is not proper citations.
Here are all the publications. So it's all there.
Right, but do you see the problem with making kind of broad claims which are, again, have been shown to be misleading, and then rather than giving specifics...
Let's pick a statement.
Rather than giving
misleading?
Well, we've been through a couple of the... But listen, rather than giving specific citations for claims that are made...
Yeah, we've been through a bunch of them already, right? The frame that you need meat to be healthy, which in the end Paul ends up admitting that you don't need meat to be healthy. Reducing meat for environmental purposes, he kind of just took that back to nutrition and didn't want to say anything there. So we've gone into some of these already. He's now saying, oh, let's go into one.
Just giving like a dump of go here and see it.
Like, it's a one-page document. It's a one-page document.
Right, but you could have citations in one page.
What it says is here is a statement, okay? And here are all the publications. Here are all the presentations that were given. Here are all the publications. Here are all the affiliations of all the people. I mean, it's all there. So I'm surprised when you say it's not there. It's actually all there. I mean, I was one of the ones who had to grind through and write that paper afterwards.
Well, my claim is that they
afterwards, I missed that. So they wrote the Dublin Declaration before they had actually written the papers on which they were going to cite.
It's not proper citation.
I guess they could have had the info already, but
in
that's weird.
Dublin Declaration, they're just kind of gesturing
the
towards
Dublin Declaration is one page.
But it could have citations. I mean, our rebuttal's like all one page. It has citations.
Chris, like all the citations. If someone wants to look at it, you pull up the page. It says Dublin Declaration. Here's a one-page statement. Here's now. Click on the thing. Here are all the videos. Click on here. Here are all the publications. It's all there, Chris.
So you're saying though that the onus for anyone who doubts something in the Dublin Declaration, how are they going to go and verify?
Read the paper.
Go and read the whole journal that it references.
No, or your particular paper, whatever your particular.
They don't give particular citations, though. The whole Dublin Declaration just says, for evidence, see this journal special issue. So how are you meant to verify anything that you doubted?
Yes,
But there's
it
no
is.
particular citations given. It just says here's all the
No, but if
evidence
you
dumped in
look
this
at the
journal.
papers, it walks through all the topics. I think there's 10 publications
I think again he knows he's kind of cooked on that by the way he says this. Oh, we go, look at the papers.
that came out of that first meeting in Ireland. There's a whole pile now that have come out of.
I'm counting that as a fourth dub.
Actually, I'm not sure if the ones from Denver are actually. No, they have been released. So all the papers are there, and they then lead to like this. There's no shortage of data. And as I said, you can pick on any topic. I mean, we talked about nutrition. The other one that annoys me in particular is the comment that we'll reduce exposure to new exotic diseases by reducing livestock. Well,
I wish a little bit more of this, and I'm going to call it.
Those viruses come out of wildlife, largely bats in particular. So it's a nonsensical statement.
Well, that's not nonsensical still, because of course our destruction of.
Where do those new viruses come from? Where did they come from? Do they come from livestock?
Our destruction of natural habitats in order to grow more feed for animals has been shown to put us in close contact.
You'll need to actually get some data first to actually show that.
He just laughs and asserts that I don't have any evidence. Neither of us are linking papers here, by the way.
Australia, if you look at our bat populations, they're largely domestic. I have a bat colony that flies over my house in inner Melbourne every night.
Yeah, that is a real thing. I haven't just made that up. He's off on talking about the bats in my city.
Okay, they've lived in our cities for a long time. They weren't displaced.
I'm not that interested in your city.
No, but you're making a statement.
Yeah.
Look at. So what I'm saying is if you look at these new and emerging diseases, a whole range of them have come out of bats. We know there's something really unusual about bats that people are studying to understand why is that the case. But to make a statement will reduce the risk of new emerging diseases by getting rid of livestock. There is no data for that. So
that's not correct. I mean, you're saying the majority of new emerging diseases come from wildlife. I notice you're not saying that we don't get new emerging diseases from livestock.
Well noticed again from me. I'm watching this back. I feel like I did very well in this debate. At least I'm picking up all the things that he's weaseling on. Let's see what he says about this.
Yeah, but look at the ones that have been a real problem.
Yeah, but
can you tell me one that's come out of livestock?
Bird flu, swine flu, these have killed loads.
Okay.
Yes.
So what is the major problem with flu? It's wild ducks. The major merge.
Again, you're kind of changing the subject there. You're not denying.
No, I asked you to give me.
You're not denying that livestock are exacerbating these things.
What I'm saying is that the concept that we will get rid of livestock and that will then reduce our, dramatically reduce exposure.
I changed to dramatically reduce because he knows it would reduce.
To new emerging disease. I said it's not actually backed up by the data.
Well, it will reduce. You don't think it will dramatically reduce?
COVID didn't come out of domestic species.
Well, I didn't say that it did, right?
No, but I asked you to give me a thing, and you gave me flu. And
it's so weird. It's so weird they said that.
I told you that flu predominantly is.
That's the first time COVID's been mentioned. He just said it as if he was rebutting something that I said.
Spread by wild ducks.
Again, you're saying predominantly. You're not saying animal agriculture has nothing to do with this. You're not actually saying if we.
So what happens is that we had it in the US recently. So we had a new flu species, and we got crossover into cattle, and we got some transmission. It's largely small. What generally happens in a species is you get crossover events, but then the spread is within that species. So this, the crossover events that led to COVID, we think there's probably about 3 crossover events that occurred. There wasn't a single one, but after that, it's human to human spread that spreads that. So it's nothing to do with livestock. It's human. That's what we see time and time again.
Don't you think, though, that having abundant...
This is interesting as well. This is something that he's brought up in terms of the livestock and zoonotic diseases. I didn't bring this up. He said, it annoys me sometimes people are misleading on this point. Now, I've heard him talking about this before, and I know he has particular things that he mentions, but he is not denying that livestock are a part of the problem here. He's saying, oh, actually, the majority is from wildlife, and if we got rid of livestock, we'd still have zoonotic diseases. It's like, okay, but it would be way less. You're not denying that livestock systems exacerbate these. You're just saying, well, they don't all originate in livestock. Like, I think he thought this was a good point, but just isn't.
Bunch of very genetically similar livestock kept in close proximity in unhygienic conditions might exacerbate some of those circumstances for spreading those diseases within that species.
Well, we actually don't have the data. If we look at
I think we do have data on that.
No, you actually made a statement that if we reduced it, and I'm asking the question, give me an example of that. You know, they're broad-based statements. Oh, well, it's, if we didn't destroy that. No, we shouldn't destroy, obviously, environments. But to say that that then results in these new emerging diseases is not backed up by the data. COVID
I'm not hearing... This is a real thing. I didn't have the reference to hand on the habitat destruction stuff. But my main point here is he is not denying the link between livestock and zoonotic diseases. He's just kind of pretending that he is.
COVID did not come out of domestic species. Ebola did not come out of domestic species.
Yeah, listen, I mean, you could do this.
HIV did not come out of domestic species.
Right, but you can do the same thing for any...
I can name a bunch of diseases that did, right? We've got swine flu, we've got bird flu. There was a bunch of the MERS and stuff like that. That was from farmed animals. I have a timeline of these somewhere. There's like at least half a dozen over the past few decades that have been major diseases that have come out of livestock farming. I don't know why he's pretending that's not the case.
Any critique that you can... I mean, you're just changing the subject, right? There's no...
No, I'm actually saying give me the data that shows, give me an example of a new and emerging disease that came out of livestock that created a major epidemic. The other one you use is antibiotic resistance, which again...
Going to change the subject again here. I've already told him bird flu and swine flu, and he said, well, the main problem with bird flu is wild geese. So you're not saying that it didn't come from livestock, or the livestock don't exacerbate it. You're just saying that there's some other problem to do with it as well.
You're putting words in my mouth. I've not brought this up.
Chris, it's actually...
I didn't bring up the last thing either. We're kind of going off on one here, but that's...
No, but again, this has been your commentary in a range of your documents. I've raised this issue with you before online, that the issue of antibiotic resistance in humans is largely come about through the overuse.
I'm not sure if I have spoken to Paul about this before, but he has a whole thing he wants to say about antibiotics. This is not something that I was looking to debate.
And the misuse of antibiotics in humans. There's a very little percentage that crosses over. We get antibiotic resistance in animals, but it's largely different pathogens. They're not zoonotic pathogens.
I don't know if we...
Largely different. Doesn't say entirely different. Clearly there is a potential for crossover.
I've seen...
There's diseases that cross over, there's overuse of antibiotics in farmed animals. Majority of antibiotics are going in farmed animals.
You posting about the antibiotics, I don't know if we have clashed on it before, but again, it's kind of like, can you see the problem with, if I were to say, drinking increases your chances of getting cancer, you could say, well, look, most of the cancer risk is not coming from drinking. Most of the cancer risk is coming from smoking. Now, it might still be a good idea to drink less, right?
There's lots of reasons to drink less. Obesity would be one of them.
No, that's not the point I'm making at all. He's going to get back on obesity. I'm saying that he's bringing up something which is parallel to the point that I'm making, doesn't actually rebut the point that I'm making. He's just saying, yes, there's other problems as well.
Right, but the point here is that you're kind of changing the subject from...
Well, if you're raising...
You're bringing up some other cause of things. You're not actually denying the link to animal agriculture. But if you're raising this in the
context of discussion about livestock, then the GBD data showed no correlation at all with unprocessed meat and any of the cancers, colorectal cancer, breast cancer, etc. That's right, what it states.
We can do the GBD stuff, so we only have a little bit of time left. Well, just first, so you resisted me a bit on the citations. Anything to say about the failure to disclose conflicts of interests or the industry-owned journal?
Look, I think the reality that people who work in livestock work with livestock industries. Not really is that surprising. People who work in human health work with humans.
Right,
I mean,
but they
it's not a
made quite a show of saying there's no industry influence, there's no industry affiliation, and they did not
Look,
disclose
I
those
don't know that
conflicts as the
anyone's
issue.
actually gone out and said it. The affiliations in the publications, you'll read the publications, all of our affiliations are actually stated. They're actually quite an expanded affiliation.
Well,
if
they
you
are
look at them.
now, after
No,
some
they were
journalists.
always there.
I don't
The
think that's the case.
publications always had those.
The issue is he has written one of the papers that underlies this, and yeah, maybe he is not somebody who withheld affiliations or didn't properly disclose conflicts of interest, so he's kind of talking about his experience. And I think he just doesn't know about this other instance that I'm talking about. There was a bunch of investigative journalists that uncovered these connections between the Dublin Declaration authors and the animal industries, which they had not disclosed, and they are meant to disclose.
I was one of the people who wrote the paper. You have to put it in there.
Okay,
The affiliation is in there.
There was investigative journalism which uncovered a lot of industry links for Dublin Declaration authors, which came out a year after the Dublin Declaration was published. And at that stage, the authors put their hands and said, "Okay."
That people who work with livestock work with the livestock industry. Is that the revelation?
You know that they're meant to disclose those conflicts of interest and that they didn't.
Have a look at the publications. You'll see all the affiliations are there.
Okay, so it's possible that you just don't know this thing about the conflicts of interest were disclosed like a year later. That's okay. I mean, you don't have to know everything about this publication, right? Okay, let's leave the double directed.
He looks sad there. I'm satisfied that I left him looking a bit sad for a little while, because that's as close as you can get to a concession, right? Okay, he just didn't know about this failure to disclose conflict of interest things. We're going to talk about global burden of disease studies now, and this is the whole thing about the health risks of red meat.
Double declaration stuff there, because we'll talk a little bit about global burden of disease. I don't know if you have a hard stop on the hour, by the way. We're only 5 minutes to.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, nice. I can go.
I just got to cook dinner when I'm finished.
Nice. Well, do you know what? I appreciate you doing this. It's 9 a.m. for me. It's Paul's evening over in Australia, so I do appreciate you taking the time. So on the global burden of disease set of claims, can I give you my sort of understanding of what's happened there, and then you can tell me if or where I'm going wrong? So this is not a set of papers that I know loads about, but I read about it a little bit in preparation for this discussion. So my understanding is that basically they have these assessments using DALYs, which is disability adjusted life years, which is meant to be kind of like an all-encompassing health measure, more or less, right? It's like you get so many points if you've got cancer, you get so many points, right? And
I think I'm going to leave this here, guys. I will probably stream tomorrow and watch the rest of this. We might do some more Fast Action Network stuff as well, and some other bits. I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching along with me. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Spread it around. And I will see you guys all soon. You take care now. Cheers.